ePortfolio session. Hi. I'm Vicki Suter. I'm the director of the California Virtual Campus. I'm going to talk a little bit about the California Virtual Campus to start with, because nobody knows what it is. And so we are doing the ePortfolio California project, so that's one of the things we sponsor. We are based in the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. So we think in terms of all the colleges, and we were chartered by Senate Bill 1437. So we're actually an organization that is working from legislation. Some of the things that we do is the Accelerated Pathways program, which is a concurrent enrollment program for high school placement. The CSU East Bay project, which is a project that we're working towards to allow students to plan their entire transfer career. If they want to transfer, they can find out what classes they're going to need to take in order to transfer. We have an online learning project and so forth. And so we're supposed to be the one-stop shop for distance education in the state of California, and that's what we're working towards. And so for faculty, we are working to facilitate collaboration. We also track proposals, grant opportunities, and events featuring distance education like this one. For example, we watch for grant opportunities and then we let folks know that there are grant opportunities coming along. We support online communities, and then we work with partners like Impact to provide resources for distance education faculty. For the colleges, we maintain a distance education catalog of online courses for community colleges in California, CFUs in California, UCs in California, and privates. One of the things we look at is a new technology comes in, like ePortfolios, and rather than looking at it from an individual faculty person's level, a program level, a college level, we look at it, could this scale system-wide? So we're starting from the beginning looking at those kinds of things. We work across the segments, so we've got projects that go across all three segments, actually including K-12, and we provide the student voice. We're working really hard to help students who are having trouble getting through the process. We call it reducing the friction, so that they can get through. Distance ed is one thing that's one way for students to shorten their time to completion, reduce the number of credits they have to take, and so forth. For students, we help them explore potential careers, and we do this with partners, because if somebody is already doing a good job, like CalCERN does a fantastic job in terms of career exploration, you should take a look at it if you haven't seen it before. So we just partner with them. We don't actually create that service. CalCERN, C-A-L-C-R-N. It's fantastic. It lets students assess their skills and interests. It lets them explore with videos of this is how you would do this if you spent a day as a vending machine maintenance person, and then it lets you do a reality check. If I'm wanting to live in Sacramento and I want this basic lifestyle, being a vending machine repair person is probably not the right thing for me to do. So it's one of the examples of the programs that we work with. cdc.edu, easy enough to remember. So this session is about creating the project we're doing with creating ePortfolios and resumes, and this is one of the student projects that we did. The first phase was we figured out what kind of organization would we need in order to scale this system-wide. We identified two large applications, eFolio and Epsilon, to work with in the testing mode. We created a licensing model because, of course, if you're talking about something system-wide, you need something that individual colleges can license to and take advantage of lower prices. We recruited and supported 21 pilots, K-12 through community colleges, through CSUs. We did face-to-face training, and we developed a website and materials, which you'll see in a second. Where we are now with ePortfolio California is we're working with a very large organization called PESC, the Post-Secondary Educational Software Council, Standards Council, and what they do is they develop standards so that all the application developers can work to these standards so things are interoperable between. So if you create a file or create for example, an ePortfolio, in one of the 15 ePortfolio applications there are, the standards will allow you to move them to another ePortfolio system or even take it out to the web. So that's one of the things we're working on. We're doing some research on ePortfolios and certificate-based programs. One of the things we found in our pilots is that certificate-based programs have really clear outcomes defined, and so the ePortfolio, which pretty soon I'll talk about ePortfolios. ePortfolios developed to support students' demonstration of their competence in certain certificate areas are really useful. And then we're working on a community of practice. So let's talk a little bit about ePortfolios and what they are. And unfortunately or fortunately, there are a lot of definitions and uses for them. And if you think about an ePortfolio, basically, it's an electronic collection, which is important because there were portfolios in teacher ed, which ended up being notebooks like this. They were one of the first disciplines that went to an electronic portfolio because then you end up with a web page. So they're electronic collection of artifacts, meaning multimedia documents, videos, team presentations that represent an individual, that is a student or an instructor, and instructors can do their own ePortfolio. For example, if you want to show your background in your teaching and give examples of your teaching style, you can do an ePortfolio. One of our projects, ePortfolios for faculty, were being used for tenure processes. The student can have an individual ePortfolio. A department or program can look at student learning outcomes, and they can look at these ePortfolios across all the classes in the program and get indications of is that student learning outcome really being achieved in the program. So they do program review and program redesign, and it gives them some guidance about what things need to be changed, what projects might be done instead, and so forth. And then institutions use them when the accreditation folks come on campus. They are wanting to see evidence of the achievement of student learning outcomes. And a number of campuses are using ePortfolios to demonstrate that to their accrediting body. In our case, it's WASC.
Now, is this ePortfolio only for California, or is it available to other states?
This is the ePortfolio California project. The ePortfolio applications are commercially available. Some of them are free to students, so they can just go out and sign up for one. It's sort of like Monster.com on steroids. It really lets you show in lots of different ways how you can deliver, what your competence is. And it's much more than a resume, although we call them online resumes. So they can be text-based, they can be graphic, there can be multimedia elements, or it can result in a website. Lots of different ways. The other thing that ePortfolios let users do is kind of reflect on their progress through a class. So let's say it's an English composition class, and they have their first composition, and then they have their last composition. And part of what an instructor can do is show them how they progressed during the class to help them reflect on their increasing skill and facility in expressing themselves. And so that's an example of how they can do that. In a class for peer review, students can share their projects using an ePortfolio, and they can get feedback from other students. And then prospective employers, which is actually my area of interest. So there's multiple purposes. There's learning, there's process, there's planning. On the other end, there's assessment and accountability. Some faculty will use ePortfolio for non-traditional assessment. They'll assign a project, and the projects get turned in. On the ePortfolio, they get feedback from them, from the instructor and peers on their project, and they can see their project emerge. So assessment and accountability is one area. What I'm most interested in now is the marketing showcase and employment. But anyway, it's the typical blind men in the ePortfolio. It's a showcase tool. No, it's a program assessment. No, ePortfolios are for artists only. Well, no, faculty can use them for professional development. Oh, it's also a career development tool. So ePortfolios can do all of those things. So there's two faces to ePortfolios. There's this kind of face over here that has to do with immediate reflection, which is what I just talked about. So they might have a reflective journal. They might have it as a workspace. The idea is there as it goes on, they reflect on their work. The students can. And social networks allow them to do the peer reflection. Then there's the interaction phase of ePortfolios where you're selecting, you're saying, okay, thinking through, demonstrating my understanding of the kinds of skills that would be necessary for a particular position. Here are demonstrations or artifacts of how I am responding to the competency requirements. The fact that the student can even do that is huge, because students often don't get the big picture. They don't see how the pieces go together into a larger whole. And there was a session, a panel of employers who talked about that's a skill that you can demonstrate that's more important than the specific technical skill, because the technologies are going to change. But if you can show I understand the big picture and I understand how these pieces fit into the big picture, then it moves you along. And so you can think of ePortfolios both as a process and as a product. This organization by theme is what I was just referring to. And at the end, it can also be a summative assessment of your learning. Capstone projects are very typically done with ePortfolios. So from documentation of learning to documentation of achievement, ePortfolios run that range. By the way, this here at the bottom, electronicportfolios.org, that's the grandmother of ePortfolios, Helen C. Barrett. And she started with teacher education, which is where a lot of ePortfolios started, and started with specialized applications like TaskStream, which has been around a very long time. And now what she's moved to is Google Sites. So she's really looking at the Web 2.0. So as a student, what I would do is build a Google site which provides documentation of my competencies. The plus of that is that, and I'll talk about that in a minute, why that's a plus. So there's a lifelong context too. If the student owns their own ePortfolio, over time they can look at how they might develop in their profession. And again, it reflects an understanding of profession. I think at that session that we were at, one of the employers said, I want them to understand and demonstrate to me that they understand a difference between a technician and a professional. So again, it's that big picture. I not only know how to do, Adobe Premiere or Adobe Photoshop, but I understand in a larger sense how that's used. And that's one of the tools that's used. And then all the way to employment applications, which again are going to be our theme. So we did these 21 pilots, and they were K-12, they were community colleges. We had CSU-based colleges. In fact, one of them premier sites for ePortfolios is San Francisco State University, which they're using those using it campus-wide. We had UC in it as well. And the idea would be, I start my ePortfolio in my K through 12, and then I use the same ePortfolio all the way across, maybe even through the CSU, all the way through my graduation. And again, that would be a tremendous demonstration of the whole lifelong learning arc that we've talked about so much, but we really don't support. So we said, okay, now we're going to look at where we've really seen some success. And primarily it's in the areas that we show here, where there was really good uptake and people really did find it useful, and faculty continued to use it, and it grew from the individual course in the individual faculty person to programs instead of just individual courses. So demonstration of competency. This is an area where what you see are mostly visual things. A really good example of that was welders. You know, there's certificate programs in welding, and there's very specific competencies that one is supposed to achieve in welding. And there are welds that you need to demonstrate that you can do. That's all visual. And so using ePortfolio, not only can the students compare their welds to the weld the instructor made, they can compare them to each other, they can compare their progress over time, and then they can show their potential employer, I know how to do these welds. Here they are. Same way with a program or a game or series of games, web design, obviously performance art, artists, dancers, and musicians, and that's the power of audio and video that you can do in ePortfolios, and then writing, which I mentioned before, and this whole area of professional education. We saw big uptake in allied health, dental hygiene, as an example. And so here's an example of one of the students, Alex Reyes, the case study. He's a student at Los Angeles Trade Tech, and he's working on an associate's degree in computer information systems. And he actually works on campus in the media services department. So he's done things in a kind of work environment as well as things for classes. And so what he's done is he takes his coursework, his videos, his academic materials, and his artifacts that demonstrate his skills as an engineer and as a videographer, and it's in the combination that he can then show to an employer and say, this is my background, this is what I've accomplished, this is what I've done. The thing that Alex told us as we were talking to him is, you know, I apply for a job and there's a huge amount of competition for that job. And if I can make it through the first round, the ePortfolio is what gets me the interview. And being prepared to do that interview because I have thought in these terms of how does my coursework relate to my other academic materials that relate to my jobs that I've had or internships that I've had, and it's really given him really powerful skills. I almost hate to do this, but let's see if we actually can do this. This is Alex's ePortfolio. I love his picture there. Isn't he intense looking? He shows videos that he has made. For example, he did a trailer for a fashion show. So he shows that video that he did. I'm not going to play it right now, but he has his resume up on Google Docs, so anyone can get to it. He lists his work skills and his employment history, his education history, all his certificates and awards, and essentially has his cover letter on there. In addition, he's developed a whole bunch of tutorials, and he has them put up right here. You know, all the different tutorials that he did to help other students. Now, this particular one doesn't use a specific application. This uses Web 2.0 tools. But there are a lot of applications. Let's see, how do I get back out of this? Back to my...
Did he actually get a job using it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to the bottom. Click the PowerPoint.
I can do that. No.
Most current job.
Oops. Where's the PowerPoint?
The second one to the right.
No. Thank you. Yeah. So that's a case study, which is actually a pretty representative case study of students in our pilots. So as I mentioned, when I went to EDUCAUSE last year, there were 15 ePortfolio booths. So this is really catching on. At AAC&U, there were 10 ePortfolio groups. And so there really are literally dozens of commercial applications that are available. Some of these are, for example, much more oriented to an institutional perspective. Digication, for example, is a great application. All of these are. But Digication takes, lets you take it from the individual student to the whole class, for the faculty person to look at, is this class successful? Are my students really seeming to get it? To the whole program, how are all the different classes achieving the learning outcomes for this program, all the way up to the institution for accreditation. And it just takes things and gradually puts them together like that, so you have different views. Some of these students can just log in and get their own account, their own ePortfolio account. So there are some folks, some institutions, some pilot projects that said, no, we're going to use this ePortfolio commercial application, and we're going to, part of what our job was at the CVC was to negotiate some low rates, some discount rates. Or they're going to say, get your own account to TaskStream, which is what my husband had to do in a teacher ed program, for example, and then give me access as a faculty person to your account.
Do they mostly create portfolios, or do they also house them?
It depends. Some of them house them. Some of them, like eFolio World, actually provides the hosting for them. Others, you can both host them at some host site and locally. Adobe is a good example. Well, Blackboard has recently added an ePortfolio module to it, which is integrated with the learning management system, which is nice. But there's also an open source, I'm talking about the open source. Mahara is the ePortfolio application that you can integrate with Moodle, another learning management system.
Mahara?
Yeah, it's called Mahara, M-A. Yeah. Do you know, Alex? No. Yeah. Oh, did it? I missed that. That's right. Which it is an open source, just like Moodle is. Mahara is open source. And yes, exactly. It's integrated.
Integration leaves a little bit.
It's done. She's also using it.
Mm-hmm. But I hear the next version is going to be a lot better.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we are using it.
You can just put it into your online course.
Yeah, it becomes a link in your online course, and you have to give your students assignments to do certain things in Mahara. It has a blogging feature. It has another place where they can store all different kinds of files.
You need to talk to your tech staff because it needs to be installed in order for that.
You can check it out online.
Yeah.
I would advise reading Mahara using your first student.
No, you don't want to do that. But begin. Begin. If you've got somebody who's supporting Moodle, that's the person you go talk to, is whoever's supporting Moodle for your campus. Then there's the idea, and here's where Mahara is ePortfolios in the cloud, and these are open source and freeware ePortfolio software, tools, and applications. And I just have to say myself, my bias is for students who already use Web 2.0 applications, why not let them use their Web 2.0 applications? The downside of all of that is you can't use them institutionally then. You can't, bundle them up to the class level necessarily, to the program level, or to the institutional level, because they're out there in the cloud. But there is, Cornell, I think, is working on a program to do what's called scraping. Go out there and collect up the different Google site information and bring it into one place for the faculty. So WordPress has a place, Drupal. Some of these are like file sharing sites. And Google Apps. Again, Helen Barrett has a whole series of tutorials on how to use Google Sites. ePortfolioCA.org is the site for California, ePortfolio California. All this information is up there on that site, ePortfolio, and when I go to the end, it'll be there. I'll show it at the end, but ePortfolio CA for California.org. So all one word, ePortfolioCA.org. And then this is the idea of ePortfolios in the cloud. If what you're thinking about is in terms of collections of artifacts, and you're kind of thinking about an ePortfolio as storage, then you can, they can use stuff that they're used to using anyway as students, Google Docs and YouTube and Google Sites and so forth. Again, the key and where the faculty role is helping the student organize that, in a way that would relate to an employer, rather than in their usual kind of informal way, where they don't really have a sense that they're framing a digital identity that the rest of the world is going to see them through. So there's a strong role in faculty help with students, even if you do this Google Sites approach.
Is Alex's ePortfolio off the site? ePortfolio.org.
ePortfolioCA.org. Yeah, it's there. There's a whole section on students and ePortfolios. I'll actually go to the site and do a little bit of let me see where I am. Okay. So I just talked about that. So these, if you think in terms of processes where a portfolio is collection, selection, reflection, presentation, and feedback, there's this whole idea. If you think in terms of social networking, you'll want to connect student to student. You get some responding, do some sharing. So these processes may be supported by ePortfolios. And then the whole idea of archiving. And this is where it gets into, if you have an institutional ePortfolio, what happens when the student graduates? Do they get to take their ePortfolio with them? And that's why standards are so important, because the student needs to be able to take their ePortfolio with them. We strongly believe in student ownership of their ePortfolio and their ability to share the parts that they want to share with whom they want to share it.
Feedback, just that they incorporate feedback in the ePortfolio?
I absolutely do, yeah. They can get faculty feedback and they can get feedback from other students. Again, that's a piece you may not want to show the world. But good, well-designed ePortfolios let you determine who and what parts of your ePortfolio that you want to show. And then I've been speaking about standards, but we just finished a summit with PASC, the Post-Secondary Electronics Educational Software Council, where we actually had faculty saying to these application developers, these are the features we need. And I would strongly encourage you as faculty to become part of that conversation. Because otherwise what happens to you is that you just get this application like Blackboard or Moodle or whatever, and then you have to use it. And you've not been a part of the conversation that said, this is what I need it to do. A really good example of faculty not being involved in the conversation are learning management systems. Because they're organized by course, for example. If you think about the student perspective, they're organized by course. That's not the right unit of analysis. It's the student. You as a faculty person want to see other things they've done in other classes because there's a relationship, hopefully. You can't, because it's organized by course. So that's an example of where faculty need to be involved in the conversation. If you're interested in that, please let me know, and I will add you to the listserv and to the work group for that comment. What it is the ability to sit in a room, virtually with developers who are going to develop these applications and say, you may think that part's really important because it's fun to do as a programmer. Those of you who manage, classes, who are faculty in programming classes, they can very easily get off because they are programmers. They really love programming, and so sometimes this little bitty thing over here is what they concentrate on. You can talk to these developers and you can say, you want to sell this product, it needs to do this, So it's a great opportunity as faculty. So I just wanted the rest of the time I have left for a discussion. when we think in terms of students, faculty, and employers, where are the common needs between students, faculty, and employers where we could say this application would really, really support going across this whole process? And I wanted you, Jennifer, let me introduce you, Jennifer O'Hara from FedEx, who has a perspective from the employer perspective. Do you mind introduce yourself? Michael, start. And what Michael has done is he's talked to employers, and he started with the employers and in developing a system, which is open source, which is an open source system. So let's talk a bit about student, faculty, and employer needs with regard to ePortfolios.
The employer will learn the last one complete application, whether it's 1 page or 15,000 pages. So how can that be connected to a student so they have an example of always drafting the application before they complete this manual thing that's going to save them or destroy their future?
You mean an application for a job?
For a job, for FedEx, or right. For Microsoft, or for vending machine operators.
Not to put them down.
Have to have a, no, it's business.
Yeah.
But they still have to fill out that application, and my business communication doesn't require that, as well as the resume and cover letter and so on. I'm trying to figure out how I pull all those pieces together in the ePortfolio, because I'm now going to be looking at Southern California instead of the ratings, and I can't be there because I have a hard copy that I've read before. Read thousands of pages online, and neither can they mail them to me in Southern California. So
right.
I'm in a quandary.
Some comments?
Issues. I mean, with FedEx being so large, and I know they filter everybody through FedEx.com/careers, which, but when I first had an interview, I've been a manager about 6 years there, and it all was automated, which I thought was kind of bad because everything had to go through a human resource person in Texas. I, as a manager, did not look at any of the resumes.
For that first pass, anyway.
The person in Texas was going through those resumes, and I wasn't real pleased with it. But it was all filtered by this person in Texas, which may not be what they think in Texas may not be the same as we think in California, here in Silicon Valley. So I'm a little happy. I don't know how they would pull this into this ePortfolio in a big corporation like that.
Right. Yeah. I think it depends, and it also depends on where industry is going.
Yeah.
Because it used to be, you turned in a paper application. Now it's an online application. Depending on what area, it may be that online application, since it is online after all, provides the opportunity to link to demonstrations of your work. This is where ePortfolios will really come in handy.
What I like about it is, I was talking to my son in his 20s, it's so sad nowadays, every time you walk in, like normally you just walk in, shake somebody's hand, I'm looking for a job, and they like them, and you talk well, and they hire them. But now if I go for
don't enter it.
And then he doesn't get the interview. He doesn't get the interview because nobody ever sees him, nobody ever shakes his hand, he can't talk. So I think that's kind of sad. So when I saw this, I thought, that's great because you see the person.
Have a sense of the person. And their soft skills.
Would employers accept the ePortfolio as the resume in addition to...
They put a link.
Yeah.
They're putting a link on
Yeah.
So the entire thing, not just to a video, or not just to a piece of my art, or
yes.
But I think that they would still filter it.
I think you still need to include a hard or a copy of your resume specifically with a link to your ePortfolio.
But I think the person in human resource group probably wouldn't look at the ePortfolio. But if it's filtered through, it got to me.
Yeah, first stage, no. When you've got the 1,000 coming in, but when you get down to getting the interview, yeah, and that's when employers are looking at the ePortfolio. They're not looking at it at the 1,000 applicant level or the 50 applicant level or whatever. They're looking at it at the 10 application.
ePortfolio was basically resume.
It was.
So that page is the page that I'm wondering if it can work.
Absolutely.
Attached to the application and say more portfolio documentation is available. Say references.
Right.
But I think you still need to do a separate resume.
Well, that really was like a separate resume.
If you can structure it any way you want.
Because the way HR departments are working now, maybe in a couple of years,
Yeah.
but right now they still need that resume that they can scan in and look for those words. Right now, you can't do that with a website.
Yeah, that's what you can take the resume and over 2 pages.
Well, if you.
And it seems like the young people are making.
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
And our director just says we can't take this.
Yeah.
They can't scan a whole website.
No, you can. If you go from the Internet Explorer or Firefox and do that related page,
But they're not being attached to your online application.
That's I would think.
Electronic more available. Electronic scan resumes and then search for certain words.
But if
Software that does that.
they use particular software as opposed to doing some kind of keyword search. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yes, that's keywords though.
It's keywords.
Yeah, and it may be that I don't know about particular software that does keyword searches for resumes. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, they take a whole stack of applicants and they pre-screen it by running it through software that just looks for GPA,
Right.
looks for certain keywords. So I think the point she's making is an ePortfolio might not lend itself to that first part of the screening process. So maybe an ePortfolio is something that's linked in the resume and described in the resume.
Right.
In a free field on your online application, and everybody has a free field in there, you could put a link to your ePortfolio for additional information or more, not intense,
More detail.
for more detail.
Right. But as I said, I don't think ePortfolios will ever be. As somebody who's been an IT manager and gone through, gotten to the 50, and then you get to the 10, have a team looking at the 50. No, but I would look at the 10. I would look at the 10. That would tell me a whole lot more than just a resume. But it's not going to get me through HR.
Because they're on an academic search committee. It's the same type of thing. You're looking at a resume. And you're looking at the first level resume. If you don't see what you like there, you're not going to go and look at the dissertation. You're not going to look at the whatever journals or articles that somebody has written. If you don't feel that they're
It's that second level.
qualified,
Yeah.
The first one you do your screening. That's the resume. Second level, third level, you're going to
Yeah. Also, the really nice thing about ePortfolios, and again, understand, because you can do something like a Google site, or you can use some kind of web, WordPress, or, there's lots of different ways to create it. You can organize it any way you want. But faculty need to help the student understand that they need to organize it in a way that presents them well. Alex is in kind of a informal career area. If he were looking at a much more formal type of profession or career, it did. But that picture, that picture,
That was my first one. In Alex's field, it's a creative field. They're looking for specific images along with the videographer. They're not going to care what his GPA is overall. They're going to see his production, his work is perfect for what he's doing.
Yeah.
He couldn't evidence himself or evidence
That's a great word.
responsibility and his experience any better than to showcase it in something like this. One of the things that I was thinking about that might come in handy is I'm from a small community. So there still a lot of paper applications, paper resumes that get handed to the employer with a handshake. And I was just wondering what you guys would think about also handing them at the same time the CD with the ePortfolio on it.
I've seen that. I've heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard of that too. The difficulty is you know, a website is much more accessible than a CD. The CD gets lost. I'd like some comments from you because one of the things that you did was a much more structured process.
I've been working on this project for a couple of years at our college, and we partnered with 2 other colleges. So one Santa Rosa, but we also worked with College of Marin and Napa College. And our whole site, I could show it to you. Just one page if you want to see it, but it's for students, employers, and faculty. You create a basic profile. The profile is your basic resume information. There is a PDF link for the resume that you can print out.
Very nice, yeah.
There's also a PDF portfolio because you can put multimedia in there. I do digital media, so this is all kind of showcase digital media, but it would work for any kind of discipline. The real backbone to what we put together is this database that has career categories and then specific skills. So it says, I want to work in this field, and these are the actual program languages or applications that I really know how to use. And you can only pick 3 because students say they know everything. So we're trying to get them, to focus in on their real strengths. They can also show a still-ins gallery to show whatever kind of work, drawings or photographs or anything you want to scan. There is a place for videos, and they also have a place to have a link for an external website if they want to. So it's pretty complete. The whole point being is that if you're an employer, you can do a search for students on very specific skill sets. The whole point being quality over quantity, so you get just exact matches. And you can see a lot of information in a short amount of time. Because when I looked at job sites, I saw that they were completely overwhelming. There was either thousands or even tens of thousands, and it was kind of clunky and hard to get around. Or the opposite was they were sort of like a ghost town, and nobody was really there. Things were on a date.
Right.
It just seemed, so we wanted to make it so that you were kind of pre-approved to get in, that somebody's kind of watching what's going on. The whole point is to bring industry and education together, and then have faculty be sort of in the middle and kind of recommend, kind of monitor the whole.
I think the strength of that is the use of standard keywords, which would, your pick list, which would have to be very carefully done.
Yes.
There would have to be agreement because, in the California Virtual Campus, for example, we have online courses, and there's the subject field. Well, from one community college to another, the subject is very different. In California, there's only 2 bodies of code, and these are not necessarily used, top and SIP, which code the subjects against a table. But one of the advantages is that you actually match the students pick from the same table as the employers. So that
and adjust. The employers can post a position, the students can look for a specific skill, and it's an immediate match.
Yeah. The other advantage is that there's a real employer perspective there, which this is a problem with a lot of ePortfolio applications. They start from the student, the faculty perspective, and they really haven't worked from the employer perspective. That's kind of my bandwagon since I became the director of the virtual campus. I said, this is lovely, 21 pilots, where's the employers?
I think it works better with smaller employers, and you get the bigger employers like FedEx, that everything's kind of a little box.
Yeah.
in text.
I mean, the smaller employers really like it.
Yeah, and the other thing about Michael's approach is that, community colleges are regional. And, they're kind of based geographically. And faculty have contacts with employers. I mean, that's the advantage. And so in that kind of internal environment, you could do the kind of job matching, profile matching system that you have.
Yeah, what we're hoping to do, and I've been to conferences all across the country in the last few years working on building a digital media program, number 1. Number 2, trying to make sure that the content that we're offering is relative and current, because one of the things I went to early on 3 years ago was education and industry met in Dallas, kind of the first time we talked about this, because industry was really frustrated with education being behind and not being relevant and current. And so as we built the program, we wanted to make sure that we were addressing that, which I think we did. So I just went to a conference in Virginia that was about serious game design, which goes into simulation, which ties into STEM, which is kind of how I can make a lot of this stuff to we think that we can connect many schools to starting in California, but when I talk to people in Virginia, and then there's also a huge big area that's going on in Florida, there's no reason it can't be,
It's broader, yeah.
So the thing that we built, we've got a prototype, and it's, I can show how it all works, but we need to figure out what the next step is to manage it and, get it out. But it's scalable, so it's going.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing to worry about is the business model. That's the website, ePortfolioCalifornia.org. The business model, that system-wide is what, when we talk about system-wide level applications, we go, what's the business model? How can this be extended? How is it replicable? How is it sustainable? How is it scalable? You as a faculty person need to ask yourself the same questions early on, as opposed to kind of arriving at the end of a test or a pilot that you've done on ePortfolios and think, okay, this is an emerging technology. I've gotten great experience with it. What do I do then? How do I scale this to all 3 classes that I teach? That's the kind of issue. I think we're at.
What's nice about the employer could go to your site and find.
Okay. Yeah, one of the.
Find a job, the employer could search for that.
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
They can search students can search employers. Well, it's all in there. It's ready to go. I got to figure out what to do next.
But the idea there of that's the genius idea is the job position, with the ePortfolio, having the position postings with the ePortfolio. I think we're out of time. Are there any other quick questions? Thank you.
Yeah, that's